What's going on, guys? It's Devin here at Cover 3 Media. It's week 6 already for the NFL season. We're here for your starts and sits for fantasy football, guys. There's 4 teams on bye this week, so keep in mind with that, as we're going to have, more debrief about, certain running backs and receivers and quarterbacks and tight ends that you might be able to play this week due to bye if they are on your team. Stay with us, guys. Hope you guys, I'm improving your record on the season. So we're going to dive into each game this season, Christian, Adam, and myself. So let's get right into it.
It is week 6 of the fantasy football season, and I've got the start sits for this upcoming week. What are we starting with? Washington versus the Chicago Bears. Very simple here. All 3 of those great wide receivers for the Commanders were starting because at the end of the day, the Bears suck. And I'm a Bears fan, and I have to say that. Okay, they're not good. I have complete faith that if Jahan Dotson plays, he's going to have a rookie breakout sensational game. It could be rookie breakout week. We'll get into that. Moving on. We're starting Terry McLaurin. I know he's been a little disappointing, especially if Jahan's out, but even if he's not, we need to get him in the lineup. Okay, he's just better than all the secondary the Bears have. And they have a solid secondary, but Terry's just a better player. With that, we're starting David Montgomery. He came back from his injury. He looked great. I don't love this Commanders rush defense without Chase Young. Now, if Chase Young is starting, 2 things you're doing. In IDP leagues, you're starting him. I expect a big boom first game back to kind of show why he was drafted so high, prove his worth. Now, if he is playing, I'm going to have to say sit Dave Montgomery because I just see the Bears getting blown out. Their line sucks. And I'm a Bears fan. It hurts to say it, but it's reality of the situation. Now, with that said, I don't love this Washington secondary that much. And last week, Darnell Mooney started to get going a little bit. He might be a start in that flex spot and flex spot only. Justin Fields, no, we're not starting him this week. Don't expect big touchdowns, rushing yard upside, or anything like that out of him. Not yet. He's not there. Offense has still got to get better. Carson Wentz, probably not either. I don't expect it to be big things. Brian Robinson could be an interesting start. This Bears rush defense is average at best. Coming back from that gruesome injury being shot, it just sounds like a story the NFL wants to happen. I feel like he's going to get the ball. It just would make sense. So if you want a big boom at your flex position, I would start him. Otherwise, don't risk it. I'm not starting Antonio Gibson, especially with him back. He's going back to the special team by the end of the year, probably.
Jets versus Packers. This one will be interesting, guys. I hope the Packers, pull away with this one, but you never know, especially what we've seen over the past 5 weeks of the season. They just lost to the Giants there, who didn't really have much offense, I thought, other than Saquon, but, Danny Dimes figured it out. He got some stuff done for that offense as well, so we got to watch out for this against the Jets. As a Packer fan myself, who knows what Zach Wilson will bring to the table, but it's something to watch out for, guys. Without further ado, let's start with the starts here. Breece Hall is the only considerable start for me with the Jets. I think he's the only seriously consistent fantasy producer in this offense. We've seen how high his floor is as a running back. That's great. He's getting around 10 or above every week. And then we see what he could do last week with his ceiling. Incredible. I think they got to keep leaning on this guy in their offense if they want to move the ball down the field. I think he is the go-ahead number 1 running back in this offense now over Michael Carter. No questions asked. I know Michael Carter had the touchdowns last week. I thought that was kind of ridiculous. Give it to your guy who's been producing the whole game for you. Let him pad the stats, And he's your big guy on the red zone. Come on. Anyways, back to the Packers starts. Lazard is the only considerable, receiver I can say from the Packers I can start. I think he's commanding a lot of the targets, and he's very consistent, got a good relationship with Rodgers. I just don't think Lazard has a super high ceiling. I think he caps out around 20 usually, but I do think he's got a high floor above 10, so that's a great flex play for you guys, a nice consistency for you there in week 6 with all these buys. And then another player I'm starting on the Packers offense is Aaron Jones at running back 2. I think he's a big boomer bust player, but you need that in your lineup. And hope your other players can kind of pick it up if Jones has a bust. But I think against this Jets defense, Jones could have a great week as far as receiving, rushing, and touchdowns, hopefully. As far as the sits are concerned, I'm sitting Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Michael Carter. I just don't think this offense is quite prepared yet to supply these wide receivers, especially with Zach Wilson. I got to see more out of him. I think if you're going to start any of these guys, if you have to, I think it's a very tough decision between Garrett Wilson or Corey Davis. If you had both of them, I would say, if I were to rank a tier list, I would say Garrett Wilson first above Corey Davis, because Corey Davis has been dealing with a little bit of injury here, and Garrett Wilson has a little bit more big-time play potential. Then I would say Corey Davis, then I would say Elijah Moore, and then if you had to throw Michael Carter in there, if it's that atrocious, okay, I still think you guys have some better players than Michael Carter and Elijah Moore there. So I'll get back to Tyler Conklin in a minute here, guys. I'm going to talk about the sits with the Packers. Romeo Doubs, I think he's a very, very fringe type flex player. I think he's got a nice ceiling, but he's also got a low floor. It's just going to depend on how much he can get open, how much Aaron Rodgers is going to target him, how much his Packers offense, gets him involved as far as play calling and whatnot. So Doubs, I think he's, if you got no other better options, I think you could stuff him in there and get some respectable points out of him, but I'm not feeling too confident about that pick, guys. And A.J. Dillon, I'm saying he's a sit this week, guys. He could have a great week, but I just have not seen exactly what I need to see out of him. I just don't think he's in that running back 1 or 2 tier yet. I think he's definitely in that somewhat running back 3 range. If you do happen to have a situation where your buys just aren't good for you and you need to start A.J. Dillon, I still think he's a decent producer, guys. I still think his floor is around 5 points, and but his ceiling's gonna be around 15. So you're not getting much out of A.J. Dillon this season just yet. So that's where I have him yet. And then the last guy I was going to talk about is Tyler Conklin. He showed some great sparks with Joe Flacco, but now with Zach Wilson, I don't know how that's going to pan out. We saw that he hasn't been getting as much attention, which is not good, especially in PPR leagues with tight ends. You want those receptions because they usually don't get as much yards. So I will say this, though, the Packers' passing offense over the middle of the field has not been great, so maybe that will, help Tyler Conklin get open, and Zach Wilson can just dump it right over the front of the line there. Usually those rookies like that, but I don't know. I think he's a good start if you have someone on bye this week, and even if you have like some lower end tight ends, I could see starting him over them. So stick with it.
The San Francisco 49ers traveling to ATL take on the Falcons. I think San Francisco should be able to control out of this game, control out of the clock. I think it's going to look familiar to last week for San Francisco when they played Carolina. Now let's dive into San Francisco at first, because Jimmy G's under the helm now at the quarterback position, and it's not really resulting in a ton of fantasy points and opportunities for some of these studs they have on their offensive side of the ball. So, first, Jeff Wilson, I think you can start him. He's getting about 17 touches a game, and they're pretty efficient. He's getting looks in the red zone to get those touchdowns. Obviously, it depends what other running backs you have in your team, so keep that in mind for sure. But if you got a guy like Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs on bye this week, plug him in for them, no doubt about it. Now, Deebo Samuel, you're still rolling out there. I know he only had 2 catches, got that touchdown, I kind of saved the day for him this last week, but he still got 9 targets. There wasn't a lot of passes thrown around for Jimmy G. That's going to be the problem here. But, a lot of Deebo's damage last year was in the running games. Hopefully they, get him going in that more. But you got to play Deebo. His upside's too good, and his role in this offense is too damn good as well. Now, Ayuk, I think you can sit this week. I like Ayuk's talent. I just don't think there's enough volume around to feed all these mouths on San Francisco. I do think with Trey Lance, I think Jimmy G might be able to be a little more efficient, but I think with Ayuk, if Lance was still playing, would have helped Ayuk more. It looked like they had a good connection, and I think there would be more volume to go around. Now George Kittle. I'm the biggest fan of George Kittle. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL. It's getting tough every week, but, who else are you going to start over him? I got a dilemma personally because I have Dallas Goedert, and Dallas Goedert's been producing, but I love Kittle, and Kittle's upside is still larger than Goedert's in my opinion. So it's tough. If you have a guy like Kelsey Andrews, obviously you're starting them over Kittle. I don't believe you have them, Kelsey or Andrews, with Kittle on your roster, but if you do, play them over him. But if you have a guy like Goedert, I think you can debate, and if you're really just getting sick of it, can start Goedert over Kittle. Definitely depends on your team, but, Kittle, he's still running a lot of routes. They're just, he's such a good player. They're using him in the run game. That's what Shanahan likes to do. And Jimmy G hasn't, thrown a lot of passes around, but he's still been targeting Kittle. So, Kittle was a boomer bust guy last year a lot, but, you still want to leave him in there just because the potential of one of those big games he had last year. It's been frustrating, I agree. It really depends on what else you have in your roster. If you have a guy like a Goddard, like a Freiermuth, like a Hawkinson that you could play over Kittle or Pitts even maybe, that's another another thing we'll get into here in this game, then I can see maybe starting him over them. But other than that, you still got to roll Kittle out there. Now with Atlanta, there's not much to go around on this team with Cordero out now. I think you can start Kyle Pitts, temper your expectations, just like I said with Kittle. Again, I mean, if you have a guy like Goddard or Hawkinson or Freiermuth plays this week, I would play them all over Kyle Pitts this week. And then, but besides that, you got to play him. I mean, it's been annoying, and I'm sick of it, and they're wasting his talent away already. So let's hope they maybe get a new coach soon and a new quarterback. But other than that, Atlanta, Drake London, you can flex. He's still getting a lot of targets for just the amount of passes they're getting. It's just tough. But I think Drake London, you can still play in there. He's still been solid all year. Put him in your flex. Also temper your expectations. And this game might be a little boring to watch with San Francisco probably controlling a lot of the game like they did against Carolina. A lot of running plays. So keep that in mind going into that game.
New England versus Cleveland. We're riding the Ramondre Stevenson season ride right here. Last week, great week. He's getting the ball. He's just more efficient with it. He is going to end up being the go-to for that team by the end of the season. We're starting him every week until it is logical as day. I mean, I feel it is already. I also love Bailey Zappi. I think he's got potential to be a pretty solid backup in this league. Maybe not a starter. I don't know, but he did break some of Joe Burrow's records the year after he set them. So that's all I got to say. He does have potential there. Do I think he's better than Mac Jones? Who knows? I like Mac Jones, but he might be. We're not starting him this week. Definitely not. Jacoby Brissett, we're not starting. Nick Chubb, 110% starting. I don't care. Kareem Hunt, put him in the flex. You're starting him. It's just obvious as day. I will say this. In this game, I would consider starting Amari Cooper after this Cleveland offense looked pretty solid last week. Now, that's your personal opinion. I'd say flex spot. He's got that boom potential. Jacoby Brissett is connecting with him finally. So, potential there for a boom. I really don't see Jacoby Myers or Devontae Parker really doing much of anything. So, not worthy of a flex spot. Not really high ceiling. Low risk, maybe 11 to 13 points there. So, I would probably say sit them.
Jags, Colts, let's get right into it. Christian Kirk, I'm starting him, guys. I think he is still the number one wide receiver in this offense. I know it's been shaky the last couple weeks, but Trevor Lawrence hasn't been playing the greatest either. And I think, this is kind of what you see out of a young quarterback. You have good weeks, you have some bad weeks. And I think they might get out of the funk against the Colts this week, guys. And then I think ETN is the only other guy I'm really going to consider starting on this Jaguars offense. I think he has been slowly taking over this running back role. We saw how efficient he was on the ground and through the air last week. Fantastic. If he had a touchdown, guys, it would have been a great week out of him. Hopefully he can find the end zone this week against the Colts. I know the Colts got a pretty decent defense here, but, last week against Denver, Melvin Gordon, he got some considerable fantasy points just by rushing and receiving. So watch out for that, guys. ETN, I think he's a very, very, fringe type running back too, where you could sub him in and hope for a high ceiling, but he might have a bust, especially with your bye weeks, guys. He could be a flex play if you're that thin at flex right now. But again, I'm very hesitant in starting him. I think he is one of the better options out there. If you are considering it, like I said, with the Colts, I'm starting Pittman. No questions asked. He is still the number one there in Indiana. And then we got JT if he's healthy. I think if JT's healthy, he's in your lineups no matter what. Even if he's got a little bit of lingering issues, I think you got to start him here if you have JT on your team. And then for the sits, I'm sitting Marvin Jones, guys. I know he's had, some respectable production here, but I still think Christian Kirk's the number one option here. I got to see a little bit more of Marvin Jones if I consider starting him in my leagues. I think, as far as like bye weeks are concerned and, if you got him on your team and you need to start someone, I think there still are some better options out there over Marvin Jones. I'm just not confident in it. J-Rob, I think he's got to find his way to your bench if he hasn't already, guys. I'm just not liking him at all this year. And Evan Ingram, I don't think he's warranted enough to start him in my lineups. I mean, if you have to, go for it. I think he's better than like Albert O and all those guys down there, but that's my Jags sits right there. And then for the Colts, I'm sitting out Pierce, guys. I want to see more out of him. I'm worried that Pittman might take back over this passing offense. I'm sitting Hines, regardless if JT's healthy or not. I'm not liking it at all. And everyone else on this Colts offense, I am sitting, no questions.
Vikings traveling to South Beach to take on the Miami Dolphins. Let's first start with Minnesota. They're doing pretty well so far this season. You're obviously starting Jefferson. He's had 2 huge weeks back to back, looking like the receiver one on the season still. Him and Kupp just been dominating. You got to plug JJ in, no doubt about it. Dalvin Cook, you got to play again. He's been struggling a little bit here and there this season, but he's getting the volume and the touches, which we like to see, and he got 2 touchdowns last week that rewarded those fantasy managers that were patient with him on the season. You got to roll him out there. Definitely if you have Dalvin Cook and Mattinson is still on your waivers, definitely spend some fab and pick up Mattinson just to have that insurance policy, because I do think we've seen it in the past that Mattinson is a plug and play if Dalvin Cook were to miss time. That shoulder injury he has can reappear again and injure it again, so definitely keep that in mind as a Dalvin Cook owner. Thielen, definitely you can flex him. Like I said in a previous video of mine, Drake London, you could flex. I would flex London over Thielen, so it depends what you got. Got other options besides Thielen, so let us know in the comments if you have Thielen, you're debating and putting him in your flex, so let us know there. Not too great last week, but they are passing the ball a lot. But I do expect Minnesota to probably control a lot of this game as well. Also, I don't think I'm going to start Irv Smith. Depends on your tight end situation, which has just been ridiculous for a lot of people this year, outside of Kelsey and Andrews, who've just been absolute beasts. Irv Smith's been solid, getting 8-7 points here and there. So, if he's your best option, put him out there. But I just would not play him if I got Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, Pitts, Hawkinson, Goddard, Freiermuth. Those are probably the 7 I would play over him. And maybe somebody else that I'm going to be talking about in a different video as well. And now with Miami, Mostert, this running backfield has been difficult to follow and understand what the hell is going on. But Mostert, 2 weeks in a row getting the touches. You got to roll him out there if you have him, especially if you got a guy like Henry or Jacobs on bye. Keep that in mind. People are on bye this week. Put him in for them. I think he's a solid RB2 this week. I'm not the biggest fan of Mostert, but he is getting the volume, and I think he could have a pretty productive day. Tyreek Hill, if he plays, you're playing him. Waddle, if he plays, you're playing him. I understand they might not have Teddy Bridgewater now either. They might have Skylar Thompson, but their talent is too good to just leave on your bench, I think. It depends on if you have that good of receiver depth or just flex depth. So let us know in the comments, but I just really would be tough for me as a Tyreek or Waddle manager to sit them unless I have such good options on my bench that I can debate playing over them. So even with Skylar Thompson is out there, you got to play those 2 guys. And then else with Miami, I'm not starting WASvsCHI. He's been so inconsistent all year. And Edmonds, you got to leave on the bench now, as it looks like Mostert's taken over. But definitely if you have Edmonds, don't cut him or anything, because, one injury, Mostert is a 30-year-old back. And he has had a lot of injury history, so keep that in mind. Don't give up on Edmonds. Just have him on your bench in case something were to happen. But it does look like Mostert is taking over the backfield as of right now, but things can change. It is Mike McDaniel, who is a prodigy of that San Francisco headache backfield running back situation. So we'll see how that game goes in Miami. Next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Louisiana to take on the Saints. Should be a fun game to watch, I think. Especially if some guys get back healthy for the Saints. First with the Bengals, you're starting Joe Mixon. Still struggling a bit, but he's getting the volume. You got to put him in there. Jamar Chase has been a disappointment for a lot of people this season. Just expecting higher expectations, and I do too, and I think they're going to come. Teams are just playing the Bengals pretty well right now, and I think it's going to eventually come through, and Chase is going to have another big week. You got to roll him out there. Again, like I was saying in a previous spot with Tyreek and Waddle, too talented to leave on your bench. Now T. Higgins, you're playing him if he's healthy. This is being recorded on Tuesday, so I don't know if T will be playing or not. If he's playing, you're playing him. I know last week they ruled him healthy, and then he barely saw any snaps and re-injured himself, so it's definitely scary if he is healthy to play, but I think they're going to roll him out there this week if he is fully healthy, hopefully. And also with Cincinnati, Hayden Hurst, I'm not starting. He's been decent. He's a solid tight end, but should be a better option still, even with the tight end position just being dismal this year again, like usual. And then Tyler Boyd, if T. Higgins is out, play him as a flex. If T. Higgins plays, even if he is hurt, I would still not start him then. So depends on T. Higgins' availability for Tyler Boyd. For the Cincinnati Bengals, now with the Saints, Alvin Kamara rolling out there. He finally had a great week. Told you to have patience with him. He's still a lead back, still getting the volume. And I think he can be a league winner down the stretch if you bought him low. in leagues. Chris Olave, I wasn't the biggest fan of him coming out of Ohio State. I'll be honest, and he's proved me wrong. He's looking like an absolute stud on the Saints right now. Had a really bad look at a concussion last week here. So I don't know if he's going to play. If he plays, you're playing him. If not, obviously don't play him. But he's proven to be possibly number one option in the Saints offense. He's proven me wrong. Dynasty outlook, though, still, like I will say, I just don't know how high his ceiling is compared to some of these other guys. But, I mean, he's proven me wrong so far by a lot. So we'll see with Olave. He's looking very good. I'm not going to lie. Now, Taysom Hill was a tight end 1 last week, 4 touchdowns. He's still that gadget guy for the Saints when injuries occur. I will say this. If Taysom Hill, you could put in your lineup if Jameis is out. If Jameis is out and they roll out Andy Dalton, Taysom Hill will be heavily involved. I guarantee it. And then you could play him in your tight end position because it depends who you have, though. If you have like a top 3-4 guy, you got to play them. But if not, if you have a guy like Irv Smith or like Dalton Schultz, someone who's been inconsistent or hurt, I would put Taysom Hill in there and throw the dice out there again for him to just get some random looks to get the touchdowns. But that's only if Jameis doesn't play. If Jameis plays, I just don't think I'd play Taysom because I think Jameis will throw the ball more and they'll have a different approach to the game. Also with the Saints, MT. If he's healthy, I think you'd roll him out as a flex, but I don't know if he will be. And especially if Olave's out and he's in, you're definitely playing MT. So it all depends on the health. Like I said, this video is being recorded Tuesday, so it all depends on that. So keep updated with those Saints receivers, what's happening, and Jameis, what his health is, because that could determine these receivers' volume as well as maybe playing Taysom Hill at your tight end position. Now, that should be a fun game to watch, I think, especially if some people are back. So that should be a fun one in the Dome in New Orleans.
We got Baltimore versus Giants. This game, I'm actually kind of interested to see what happens here as far as fantasy is concerned. Starting with Baltimore, Mark Andrews, he's a lock. Bateman, if he's healthy, I think you got to put him in there, guys. I think Bateman is definitely the number 1 receiver in this offense behind Mark Andrews as far as the passing game goes. So Bateman with that big play potential and that red zone, ability, I think he's a good start in your lineup if he's healthy. Obviously, if your team is stacked, he might find his way pushed out of the lineup. Ask questions if you have, Bateman with a lot of guys. Bateman might be one of those guys where it's like, okay, he's coming off injury. He might not have that high ceiling that we need. So definitely drop a comment if you have a situation like that, guys. And then the Giants. Saquon Barkley, only guy I'm starting on the Giants no matter what. He is this offense, no questions asked. I don't care what you say about Danny Dimes. It's not going to be happening every week that Danny Dimes has a good week. And who is it going to go to on this passing offense that's going to really be a great benefactor? I think it's just Saquon in this offense, guys. You're starting him against the Baltimore Ravens. Sits for the Ravens, J.K. Dobbins. I'm sitting him against this Giants defense. I think the Giants defense is a little bit underrated here, guys. I think they got something good working over there in New York. So I'm still not confident in him as a running back, guys, especially with his knee injury. I think he's lost explosiveness. I know he's still getting worked in the offense, guys, but I'm just not liking it. Not liking it this week at least. So there's that. And then we're also going to sit Duvernay. Okay, no questions asked there. I just don't think Duvernay has high enough of a ceiling for me to be starting him at all. Just to mention a couple guys I'd start over J.K. Dobbins. I would start Melvin Gordon over him, Singletary over him, ETN I'd consider over him, and if James Conner, his ribs are fully healed, I'd consider starting him over J.K. Dobbins. Otherwise, James Conner might be limited if his ribs are still an issue, so look out for that, guys.
Next, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to Steel City to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. First with Tampa Bay, your start Leonard Fournette had a monster game. That's what we like to see if you're a Fournette manager. Rachaad White's starting to get a little more work here and there because they just can't give Fournette, that amount of work all year and expect him not to get hurt as he's a little bit of an older back, has had some wear and tear on that running back position for himself. So keep that in mind. If you're a Fournette owner and Rachaad White is available on waivers, I would pick him up and leave him in case an injury were to occur. I hate predicting injuries, but you never know just the volume he's been getting. Because if Fournette goes down, Rachaad White is immediately going to be producing a lot of fantasy points, I believe. Also, Tampa Bay, you're starting Mike Evans. He's been the number one guy still. Had 4 catches for 81 yards last week. We want to see more production, but I mean, he's still the number one guy, in my opinion, in this offense. Chris Godwin, you can start now too. Looks like he's healthy. Had a solid game for Tampa Bay. He's a 1A, 1B with Evans. So if you have Godwin, you can play him confidently now, I think, since he looks healthy as can be. But yeah, that's really it for Tampa Bay. I'm not starting their tight ends, and then I'm not starting Julio either. We don't know if he's healthy or not, and even if he comes back, I just don't think he'll be getting the volume that you would want to put in a player you want in your lineup, especially with Evans and Godwin playing so well. Now with the Steelers, Kenny Pickett's in the offense now, so it's definitely helped a few players. Freiermuth, if you have him at tight end, I would play him, but be careful, he has a concussion, so we don't know if he's playing as of right now too. So keep in mind with his injury, have a backup plan in case, like a Tanyan or somebody if someone's on waivers, or a Taysom Hill. So keep that in mind with Freiermuth. Deontay Johnson, you can flex. He's still getting targets and volume. It's not great, but it's still flex worthy. He's solid. Pickett's throwing the rock a lot, and they might be trailing a lot in this game like they were last week. And George Pickens, depends what your options are, but he's had a great connection with Kenny Pickett. 6 catches back-to-back weeks, about 100 yards and then 80 yards this past week. So I think you can flex him. It depends on your other options, but I like him as a flex, even against the Tampa Bay offense, because I think Pittsburgh's going to have to throw the ball out because Tampa Bay's run defense is so tough. And that leads me right into this. It's time to sit Najee Harris. I've lost my patience with the guy. He's not getting the volume we expected. He's not getting, those catches that he was so valuable to have in PPR leagues last year, because even when he wasn't super efficient on the ground last season, because this O-line is still trash, he was making up in the receiving work, and he's not getting the receiving work at all. So until we see, a game where he gets, 12 points, I'm not playing him, especially against Tampa Bay's run defense that's so hard to come by. Look at other options. I know it might be grim, especially if you have Najee and then you have like a Henry or Jacobs who's on bye. But keep in mind, maybe Ken Walker, the Seahawks, who's taking over for pennies on your waivers, go pick him up and play him over Najee this week. I'm telling you, Najee, I love the talent. I just hate this situation right now. I just cannot play him until I see some better days ahead. So that, I think Tampa Bay should be able to win that game pretty easily. Steelers, it's looking like with Tomlin, it might be their first losing season in a long time. But they got a bright future. I think they just got to fix some things. And TJ Watt hopefully will come back soon.
Carolina versus the Rams. We got to start Christian McCaffrey. I don't love it, but just because of the sheer volume the Carolina's going to have to give him to even have a chance in this game, he's probably going to get at least like 14, 15 points. Now, does he stay healthy through it all? I don't know. Are they also looking at shopping him in trades? I heard the Bills might be reaching out to Carolina to get Christian McCaffrey. That happens. The league is broken. I don't know what to say about that. You're lining him up everywhere from the slot to the backfield. That would be nasty. But for this game specifically, we're starting him. We're benching DJ Moore until Baker proves to me that he wants to throw the ball to his number one target. I can't trust it. And it's sad because I love DJ Moore. Such wasted talent. Also heard murmurs maybe he's going over to Kansas City. I think the Packers should reach out about him, to be honest. Regardless, we're not starting him this week. Now, when it comes to the Rams, Cooper Kupp, obviously. I could honestly see Darrell Henderson having a pretty good game. He is their lead back. At the end of the day, I know people think it's Cam Akers. It's not. It's Darrell Henderson. He gets better volume, and he does better with his touches. And I don't love Carolina on defense right now. I just don't love teams that can't get it done on both sides of the ball. It affects the other side. And I think the Rams are going to stomp over them. I think they're kind of mad about their slow start to the year. They had a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. Matt Stafford's a start this week, for sure. Obviously, unless you have a primetime quarterback. And honestly, I would even go out on a limb and say Allen Robinson in your flex spot. He's got boom or bust potential. I think he's going to get a touchdown. I think that this is a good game to get him going into their bye. So start all of them.
Cardinals at Seattle. This game should be a high-scoring game here. The Seattle offense with Geno Smith has been proving that they mean business. They're doing pretty well over there on offense. I think Geno Smith, if he plays the way he was playing week 5, we're looking for a great game here, guys. Arizona's got an okay offense. They get it done for a couple of offensive players. I think with the 2 weak defenses in Arizona and Seattle, I think this game could be very high-scoring and fantastic for fantasy. For Arizona, if James Conner is healthy, if his ribs aren't hurting or they're not holding back, he's going to be in a full workload. I'll start him. Otherwise, I'm a little bit concerned there, guys. I will say this with James Conner, he is their goal line back. So even if he is a little bit shaky, if they're going to be using him on the goal line, guys, this is where he gets most of his points anyways. I could see him still being a very good producer in this offense for fantasy. And then Hollywood Brown, no questions asked, I'm starting him. He's had some great weeks here, guys. He's been proving himself there in Arizona with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's top option. I'm liking it there against Seattle, especially in Zach Ertz. He's in your lineup unless you have some fantastic tight end. Okay, Seattle. These guys have earned starting positions in your lineup. Very, very good spots in your lineup considering what they have been doing the last couple weeks with Geno Smith. Their offense has been on a roll. DK, Lockett, they're in your starting lineups. I think these are great players. DK is a wide receiver 2 option this week, I think. And Lockett's a wide receiver 3 or 4 option this week, in that flex range. So if you only have one flex out there, Lockett might not be a great option, but if you got 2, he's in there. So I like that. And then Ken Walker is a big maybe for me, guys, with the absence of Rashad Penny now, guys. I think Ken Walker might just be able to pop off in this offense. I think it's his time to shine, his time to get a good workload here in Seattle. And, we saw last week he took a 69-yard rush to the house. A nice little house call there for the rookie. I think he might have his rookie breakout week 6 and, get on this rookie breakout train that Damian Pierce has been having, Breece Hall, and some other wide receivers in this rookie class. So watch out for that, guys. If you're in a bye week situation where, Ken Walker's your third running back and you got a guy on bye, you stick him in. No questions asked. All right. Sits. We're sitting Rondale Moore on Arizona. I'm not confident Kyler Murray can supply more than Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz. And all else on this offense, I'm sitting, guys. Whoever is the backup for James Conner, whoever you're considering who might be getting some touches this week, I'm not putting him in there. Just don't feel confident in that enough. And then on Seattle, all else, all the backup running backs, all the tight ends, all the other wide receivers, I'm not starting, no questions asked. But yeah, should be a high-scoring game for these players I mentioned.
We got a fun game of the year last year in the playoffs, and now we get in the regular season. It's the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. This should be a fun game to watch, and I hope you have fantasy guys in there that you can root for. Let's first start out with the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, you're starting Stephon Diggs. The Chiefs have a lot of fantasy points. The receiver ones on the other teams. Diggs is one of the best receivers in the league. One of the best fantasy receivers in the league. You're playing him. Gabe Davis. Hopefully you guys saw my video where I thought it was your last time to buy low on this guy. He was banged up the last few weeks, and people might have been giving up on him. And then he explodes. I know the volume's not been there. He's not getting a lot of targets, but this is what Gabe Davis says. He's a deep threat, but a deep threat in an offense led by Josh Allen, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the league and can throw that ball down the damn field. You want a guy like that in your on your fantasy team, in your lineups, at that flex position. He's a solid receiver 3 always, I think, just with the upside. I know it's going to be, some weeks of boom and bust, but look what the boom was last week. And I'm sure a lot of people that had him on their rosters who played him are feeling good about themselves and probably won their matchup. So I would flex Gabe Davis, no doubt about it. Now with Singletary, I would probably sit him. It was kind of tough. He didn't have that good of a game, but the Bills are up by so much that James Cook got a lot of work. But Singletary, it definitely depends on your situation at hand at running backs. Again, Jacobs, Henry on bye, you got to play him because that's your best option. Now, like him or Najee, I was talking about Najee sitting him. I think I'd roll with Najee just because the touchdown upside's there more likely than Devin Singletary. But yeah, I don't know. It's not looking good for Singletary either. Dawson Knox didn't play last week. Even if he plays, I think there's better tight end options right now on the season. And then let's dive with the Chiefs. Obviously, you're starting Travis Kelce, tight end 1, 4-touchdown game on Monday Night Football. He's an absolute beast. He's an advantage to have. It's looking like people that took him early in drafts. It's paying off again. Even though he's an older guy, it doesn't look like it matters. It's such a good advantage to have him or Andrews this season. And I guarantee those teams that probably have him or Andrews are really happy right now with their teams. The only other guy I really want to play on this Kansas City offense, just because Mahomes is spreading the ball around so much, is MVS, actually. I would flex him. He had a good week, 90 yards this past Monday Night Football game, but weeks before that he's been getting 8 or 9 around what Juju's getting. I just think his ceiling might be a little higher because of his deep threat ability. So he's a desperate flex. I wouldn't be super confident starting him, but I think you could plug him in there if you need an upside shot. at the flex position. Clyde, finally, no touchdowns, and look what he got. He hasn't been getting the volume all season. He's been getting a lot of touchdowns. That's why he's been scoring fantasy points. In week 4, he got the touches finally, but it's just so inconsistent with touches because they run a committee with McKinnon, who looks solid on Monday Night Football, and Pacheco, the rookie. So if I'm a Clyde manager, you got to sit him. I know he usually gets those red zone touches that are valuable, and people are going to want to start people in this game, so I understand that, but I hope you have better options than Clyde. If you don't, obviously you got to play him, but if I have him and I have 2 backs easily better, I'm playing them over him. And then Juju, I think I would sit. It's a similar situation to MVS. I would just rather play MVS because I think there's more upside with him being a deep threat with Mahomes. Juju's been decent, but just not someone I really want to play. It's just not consistent with Mahomes, who he wants to target right now in this offense. But I cannot wait for that game. It should be so exciting to watch, and I expect fireworks all around for fantasy players in that game.
For what could be easily the best game of the week, Philly versus Dallas, the showdown of the century. Darius Slay is going to be matched up on CeeDee Lamb, but it's also an opportunity for CeeDee to show he's a dominant wide receiver. If you want to go out there and take that risk, he could have high reward. You're starting him this week. It's primetime game. Zeke, Tony Pollard. Who's it going to be this week that gets you a solid actual amount of fantasy points? That's really interesting, especially against this Eagles defense that has honestly been so great this season thus far. I'm going to say take the risk and start both. I don't love matchups for a lot of the other leagues' backs. So maybe if you have a weak running back too, or if you have a weak flex spot, I'd say start both. But between the two, we're starting Tony Pollard over him as Cooper Rush is throwing him the ball a little bit more. Receptions and receiving yards are the same amount as rushing yards. So just getting those receptions over just rushing attempts is going to be a factor for Tony Pollard to score more. Even if Zeke has a better game, both have touchdown potential. Both have boom potential. I still would say start Zeke. Going over to the other side of the ball, we're starting Miles Sanders because when they get in the red zone, they give him the ball. Although Kenneth Gainwell also gets it. It's a little interesting on that side of things. Definitely have to start Devontae Smith. Definitely have to start A.J. Brown. They're so good. And even when they're bad, they're good. A.J. Brown I hope he's able to play. Little struggling there a little bit, but I think he'll be all right. I think he's going to suit up for this big-ass game. And realistically, I think we kind of have to sit Gainwell just because they've been going to Miles Sanders right now. I don't love saying start Miles Sanders just because I don't think he's really that good of a running back, but sheer volume again might get it done. Kind of similar over to the Christian McCaffrey, but Christian McCaffrey's actually good, So it's interesting. It's America's Game of the Week. Obviously, we're starting Jalen Hurts. I don't care what anyone says about Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. You're starting him.
And then Broncos versus Chargers. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this one. I hope the Chargers can run away with this one, being a Herbert fan and Herbert owner myself. But Denver, their defense seems to be sneaky good here. So we'll see what happens. But, with the starts here, we can start Melvin Gordon. I think we saw last week that he was carrying the workload. He got some good, efficient running going. Against this Chargers defense, it might be a little bit tough here. But I think Melvin Gordon is still a significant option, especially if they can get into the red zone. Maybe Melvin Gordon can get himself a touchdown. So there's Melvin Gordon. And then for the passing game, I'm only starting Sutton and Judy. I think Judy is a very fringe flex player. I'm not so confident on Judy. I'm more confident in Sutton being that number one option for Russ down the field. So Judy, it's going to be situational depending on your depth of your team. I think if you're in a one flex league again, you're not starting Judy. But if you're in a two flex league, Judy might be in there. Not so confident in that, though. Now, with the Chargers. Austin Eckler, no questions asked. Mike Williams, no questions asked. They're in your starting lineups. They're great players. Austin Eckler, running back 1. Mike Williams, wide receiver 2 to 3 range. So even if you only have one flex, he's in there. Keenan Allen, if he's a full go. Even if he's like 75%, I think he could be a solid flex play this week. Being such a highly targeted, very high volume receptions kind of player, especially with, Justin Herbert liking Keenan Allen so much. I think this might be a good start for you guys. And then for the sits with Denver, I'm sitting at Albert O. He's been dookie, and everyone else on this Denver offense, I don't think anyone else is going to be able to score the points required. And then for the Chargers, I am sitting Gerald Everett and all else. I know Gerald Everett has had a couple good weeks, but especially if Keenan's coming back, monitor that. I think, Gerald Everett's, overall production is going to be going down. So, I don't know. I think this one could be a good scoring week, especially for the Chargers players. I think, Denver might be able to keep it within a certain range to keep the game rolling, but we'll see what Russ can do.
That wraps up our Week 6 starts and sits here at Cover 3 Media. Please drop a like and comment your questions on your tough decisions here with bye weeks. Give us a like and subscription, guys. We appreciate you. We're winning championships here. Check us out on TikTok, Instagram at Cover 3 Media, guys. Stay with us, baby.